Welcome everybody to today's episode of the Alium Works Legacy Program. Now, if you haven't joined one of the legacy programs before, this is an opportunity where industry experts actually give up their time to come talk to us, and especially newcomers in the industry, to pass on that knowledge. Now, as you know, we're going through a critical skills crisis at the moment. Over the next couple of years, we're going to lose about 20% of our workforce. And with that, a loss of 20% is also knowledge. We lose knowledge on an exponential rate on an annual basis. So the idea behind the legacy program is to get people like Lawrence, who is an expert in his field, who's been in the industry for decades. And I I didn't quite know what was the exact year, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be over 20 years, whether that's nationally or internationally. But this is a really good avenue for people to sort of tap into, and to tap into the expertise and the experts that we currently have in the industry. So thank you so much for your time today. And now Lawrence is the head of HSEQE for MTR Australia. He does bring a wealth of experience with him from working with other organizations, and I'm sure he's going to talk to you about that. But definitely a very valuable connection to have in your network as well, anything relating to rail safety. And I'm pretty sure that Lawrence wouldn't shy away from putting up his hand if he had any questions in relation to this session. But I'm going to hand over to you, Lawrence, and give the platform over to you.
Thank you very much, Anne, and welcome to the audience today. Please feel free to stop me at any point and ask any clarifying questions, because there's a lot of reference to legislation, regulation, etc., and how the industry actually operates. There's just so many frameworks out there. There's no one perfect one, but we'll try and cover the key principles of it all, and I hope it makes sense at the end of it all, because it is a very complex arrangement. Every rail organisation does something slightly different. And then they overlay that with a lot of induction courses. Just on the project that I currently work on, there's around about 37 inductions to get through. So it's a pretty robust process. So Sam, if you would do the honours and take us to the next slide, please. So just starting off with the legislative framework that sits behind while we do rail safety worker competency management. So the Rail Safety National Law, which was issued in 2012 and then promulgated across all states, gives us clear guidance and direction around making sure that before someone undertakes a job or rail safety work, they have to be competent to perform the task. So the objective of the Rail Safety National Law is to provide an effective management of safety risks, and there's a special provision for the control of particular risks arising from railway operations. And just a couple of those examples would be signals pass a danger without authority, exceeding limits of authority. So if you're working in a rail environment where there's no signalling systems, they'll usually give you geographical markers, and you can't go beyond that if you are operating any rolling stock, the rolling stock being either high rail vehicles, if you're in a construction or trains, whatever the case may be. And then derailments, people being struck by our rail vehicles while undertaking rail safety work in the rail corridor. So those are the key risks that they're actually trying to control. And it starts off right back in the design phase of it. But we'll talk to that further into the presentation. So the responsibility for rail safety. So rail transport operators. So that's the typical Sydney Trains, ARTC, Queensland Rail, Horizon, Metro Trains Melbourne, Metro Trains Sydney, and then there's train services that run out through Western Australia as well, Adelaide, that also have to conform to this legislative framework. So they have a duty as a rail transport operator, and the general safety duty of rail transport operators to ensure that safety of the railway operations, so far as is reasonably practicable. Whenever you read the legislation, it keeps making reference to reasonably practicable under Section 52 of the Rail Safety National Law. So this extends to any person, including members of the public, passengers, rail safety workers, and other workers who may be exposed to safety risk as part of the rail operations. And we even talk about level crossings as well. And every year the rail industry will go out on a campaign to create a lot of awareness around the risk of travelling over a level crossing and being potentially struck by an approaching train. In discharging the duty, the rail safety worker is undertaking work under their accreditation. There's specific requirements in the law, such as ensuring that the health of the rail safety workers to the national safety standard of rail safety workers and assessing the workers' competency under the Australian qualification framework. So this course that you are undertaking now aligns nicely to the AQF piece, the Australian qualification framework, and hence a lot of organisations are reaching out to Alium Works and connecting to make sure. So, and with the rail safety workers, there's 4 categories: category 1, 2, 3, 4. But I'll talk about that later in the presentation. So, duty of rail safety workers. So, as much as the rail transport operator has a responsibility to making sure that there's a rail safety worker program in place, there's also the duties that fall upon the rail safety workers itself. So, and some of those duties are under Section 56 of the Rail Safety National Law, and it's to comply with the operator's SMS and to take reasonable care of their own and other safety. So, when you turn up to work as a rail safety worker, you have to follow the safety management system. It's not a choice. The safety management system has been approved, and people must be trained out in the safety management system in the use of that system day in and day out without compromise. So, what is rail safety work? This is a subject that there's always a lot of conversation around. Is a construction site for rail, rail safety workers? Yes, no. So you have to go through some sort of a categorization process and identify the type of work. Are you working on rail infrastructure? Are you working with rolling stock? Or are you just building a lift that's going to get people from the ground floor through to to street level? Is it rail infrastructure? Is it not rail infrastructure? So you go through a process of elimination, and the legislation gives you good guidance, Section 8.1. So it talks about driving and dispatching rolling stock as capable of controlling and affecting movement of rolling stock. So that could be anything. It could be from a trolley, just a little trolley that you put some components on and push it on the train track. Train sets itself, how rail vehicles, RRVs, all of them are classified as rolling stock. So if you're a track machine operator that's going to be driving any of this, you will be required to undergo some form of competency assessment. Signalling systems, signalling operations, receiving relay communications, or any other activity which is capable of controlling or affecting the movement of that rolling stock. So you could be a signaller, whether you're the maintainer that comes out and actually undertakes work on that signalling system to see that it's actually functioning and fit for purpose. Then we're looking at coupling, uncoupling of rolling stock. In many years gone by, we used to have a grade called shunter. They're still around, and that's what they do. They couple, uncouple rolling stock. But then they could also just be, work with a group of rail safety workers, and someone's got the responsibility to uncouple or couple up the rolling stock to travel as a train set. Then construction, maintenance, repairing, modifying, monitoring, inspection, or testing. So any work around that is a rolling stock, including checking that the rolling stock is working properly before being used. So there's pre-inspection checklist. So whoever's completing that pre-inspection checklist is a rail safety. Then we start looking at the rail infrastructure itself. So we're looking at the overhead wires, the walls, the tunnels, the station facilities, or platforms. They all form part of the rail infrastructure. Signaling system, trackside indicators. So if you're doing any work on that, including level crossings, you are rail safety worker. Installation of components in relation to rolling stock. So if you, the person that's coming there, you're changing out any key components on that rolling stock, you are a rail safety worker. Next slide, please. Work on off. Yeah.
Can I just jump in here? So there seems to be a lot of confusion in the industry that because I have a rail industry worker card, I am now a rail safety worker as well. So we obviously explained the difference in the course that we deliver, but just very quickly, I know you've just gone through what is a rail safety worker and what constitutes rail safety work. But can you just very quickly explain the difference between a rail industry worker and a rail safety worker?
Okay, so if we go back to the Australian Railway Association way back in sort of 2010, around that era, and maybe even a little bit before that, but that's more or less when the rail industry across Australia came together and said, let's put a uniform approach to this. What is a rail safety worker? What's not a rail safety worker? And try and put them all into one system. And they created the RIW system, rail industry worker. So whether you are a rail safety worker or you're not a rail safety worker, you're still a rail industry worker. Okay, so then within the classifications, we'll see that So you're either category 1, 2, 3, 4 rail safety worker, depending on whether you're doing safety critical work or you're doing non-safety critical work. And you haven't got a rail safety worker category 4. So large organizations such as Sydney Trains, when they employ a rail safety worker category 4, all you do is basically a drug and alcohol screen. You're not subjected to any belly dancing, push-ups, and all the other things that go with doing the other components of the rail safety medical examination. So we also have, as an organisation that I'm currently working for, is we have non-rail safety workers as well. So that's typically your people that work in the commercial teams, in the financial teams, because they are not performing rail safety work. They're not going. It's not that they're not going out to train track, but none of their decision making process has got anything to do with rolling stock or rail infrastructure. If they were, all systems of safe work. So if they were involved in any of that activity, then we would then subject them to a process where we try to determine whether, number one, are they a rail safety worker? Number two, what category rail safety worker? Once we have identified that they are a rail safety worker. And if you identify that you're a non-safety rail safety worker, you're just not in that classification. We have a separate arrangement for you where you just go and do your medicals, but we store all the information in the RIW system, and that so people can swipe on and off every day. We monitor their fatigue because we still got WHS legislation that requires us to and a duty of care under that to make sure that we manage our own industry workforce, if I use that word. Does that make sense? Or I cause another level of confusion?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Thank you.
All right. So just to finish it off quickly. So again, rail infrastructure or associated works or equipment placed, it's very extensive. It's just about everyone that works on a railway. Installation and maintenance of works. The organisation that I work for now, we do a lot of installation and maintenance work. Telecommunication systems, we're rolling out telecom communication, cabling, splicing, etc. So it's all rail safety work. The means of supplying electricity directly to rail infrastructure, any rolling stock using rail infrastructure or telecommunication systems. So that's in the area that I currently work. We do a lot of work around that area. So everyone that works with us in that area is all rail safety workers, and their competencies will be tested against those requirements of telecommunication systems or rolling stock. Work involving certification as to the safety of rail infrastructure. So we've got track certifiers, we've got signaling system certifiers, people that go out there and certify systems, including rolling stock. There's been a notice issued by the ONSA about a month ago, calling out what we call ICPs, people that actually certify the rolling stock. So they're supposed to be independent from the people that are actually maintaining the rolling stock. And they went out and undertook a few audits, and they came back and discovered that the same person that's signing off on the maintenance of the rolling stock is also the same person being the ICP. So they've issued a very clear direction. And within the organisation that I work for, we actually communicated with those organisations and actually asked them to give us the assurance that there's a clear line of delineation between the people that actually maintain the rolling stock and certified on a daily basis or consistent with the maintenance program of that rolling stock versus the ICP that may come in once every 12 months and certify that the rolling stock's fit for purpose for another year. I go against some level of criteria, either whether it's Transport for New South Wales or it could be ARTC, whoever network owner is. And then also, very interesting here, and this is a bit of a catch-all phrase where it says work involving the development, management, or monitoring of safe work systems for railways. So if you're developing anything to do with safe work systems, management of it, so that includes the managers. So the managers actually managing that railway or monitoring safe work systems are all rail safety workers. And then work involving the management and monitoring of passenger safety on, in, or at any rail. So if you're monitoring it, then you're also a rail safety worker. So it's really, when I explain it in broad terms to people, I just say, look, it's just about everyone on the project except the person that's working in the administrative side of the business, doing photostats and managing general business, or in the company that I currently work with, like our commercial teams and our financial teams and our HR teams. They're not rail safety workers. Some of them will have a rail industry worker card because they may need to go out to site and go and actually verify that work has been completed consistent with a claim that's come through. If a particular contractor has come back to us and said that we've completed the work according to your quality standards and everything else, but you're just a witness to that. So you turn up under the supervision of a competent person, and we actually verify that, yep, they said they were going to build 100 meters of train track for us with ballast stones and everything in between. And the commercial person may want to come out and take a photo and say, yep, 100 meters of train track was built with ballast stones and sleepers. So that's the only time they may keep or hold a rail industry worker card is for those purposes. There's no questions about that. We'll go to the next one. So the way we go about this is we'll put a checklist together against all the roles, and you can see this a bit of an example on the right-hand side, where what we do is all that criteria, the 17 bits of criteria that I spoke about in the previous 2 slides, what we'll do is we're going to click a yes or no against each one of those activities there. And if you get a yes, that's the area that you are now deemed competent, not competent, you are deemed to be the rail safety worker. So we have to let rail safety workers know that they've been identified as rail safety workers, say element 19, and what the reason is for nominating that. So we'll get to a little bit of that as we go through this presentation. So yeah, it's typically an example of rail safety worker identification guidelines. And yeah, we'll just talk to designers and drafters. So what we've done is we split it up into non-rail systems, non-rail infrastructure sites versus rail systems, rail infrastructure sites. So large organizations such as John Holland, CPB, Lend-Lease, etc., they do work across both rail and other industries as well. So, and then their workforce may migrate from one industry to another because there's a bit of a downturn in maybe the building industry. So they move their workforce across to the rail industry, then they train them up and they get them working there. So we'll work through this sort of a process. Even the organization that I work for, we do the same thing. We build massive buildings, and we also build railways, or we project manage. So project site construction workers, not rail safety worker unless certifying rail infrastructure, project site construction workers, not RSW unless certifying rail infrastructure, site and off-site based construction managers, supervisors, superintendents, engineers, commissioning engineers. The minute you get onto rail systems or rail infrastructure, all of them are rail safety workers. And then key support roles. And I suspect everyone that's on this call is either working in the HSEQ functions, safety assurance, systems engineering, quality, environment. And under that, we are also all rail safety workers. Okay. And then now we start talking a little bit about the competencies itself. So what does competency actually mean? It's a combination of the skill set you're required to have, the knowledge, and or the qualification that a person performing the task is required to possess to enable them to perform the task without risk to themselves and others, or the safe operation of the railway. So that's why the competency piece is so important. If we've got one person in there that is not competent and they don't quite know why they're doing what they're doing, it's putting the organisation and the railway at risk. So in determining the appropriate competency, the operator, just to be clear, a railway, should consider the following controls that are or could be implemented to reduce risk: engineering, procedural, supervisory, and then the technical and non-technical knowledge and skills required to carry out the work safely and to ensure the safety of the rail operations. Then we start looking at the qualifications itself. So it could say, as a safety professional working on a railway, you need to have what sort of skill sets, you need to be able to undertake an investigation. We need to be able to undertake an audit of the safety management system. So what are the minimum qualifications? You need to have the baseline qualification, for example, a certificate for wind safety would then give you the base knowledge, and then you need to build your skills on top of that. You need to be able to actually go and undertake an ICAM investigation, or you go and do deep dive audits or compliance checks on the business operations. And also the level of competency that an individual requires. And then you've got rail safety workers that are also required to have a form of identification in accordance with Section 118. So I'm going to take a water break quick.
So, Roberta, you're obviously working for MTR at the moment. So have you got any questions so far? Are you quite comfortable with what Lawrence is covering?
Yeah, I'm good.
Any question?
Not especially. It's just that profile seems to be very conflictive and difficult to define, right? Many times we don't know if we are or not.
Okay. So yeah, look, we'll talk through that one. So typically the role that you hold within MTR, you're a rail safety worker, and we're working through a process now. You'll be assessed as a rail safety.
I always thought that. It's just
Yeah.
that in this course that we're doing with Anne, Richard, etc., sometimes it has been defined as blurry lines, if we were or not.
Yeah. So you definitely. So we've got a competency framework in place, and on that your role is listed as a rail safety. If I can't continue with this, but thanks for the questions, Anne. And Roberto, probably at the end of the conversation, if we still got time left, just to take a few more questions and answers. If you seek further clarification, happy to do so. And then you have different levels of competency. Say if you take on a role like myself, where you're head of HSEQ, an organisation like Transport for New South Wales will have a lot of minimum requirements, which is then built into the contract itself. So whoever heads up this team needs to have a minimum of 10 years senior management experience in railway operations. So when I joined this organisation, the first thing the client wants to see, they say, okay, well, in addition to your CV, show us all the other documentation that you hold that measures up to this. So that's just one requirement that's built into the contract as well from Transport for New South Wales. Okay, so now we talk about the health and fitness of the rail safety workers, because the rail safety worker program has got 4 categories of rail safety worker in it. So you have this national standard for health assessment of rail safety workers. You can Google it and you can read it. It's a nice thick document. It's well structured, and you can then go and follow requirements that's in this document. All rail organisations are required to adopt the standard. I know what Sydney Trains does every year. They invite all the doctors that's on the panel for Sydney Trains into a full one-day workshop where you can almost call it a bit of a VOCC process, where the doctor, the chief medical officer, steps them through the training. They do a bit of a competency check at the end of it all. And he makes it pretty clear to them what those requirements are. And, because sometimes the doctors at a particular centre change up. So he just constantly communicates those requirements through to them, okay? So as I was saying earlier, so you've got categories 1 and 2. They apply to safety critical workers. A critical worker is typically someone that's in charge of rolling stock. That's typically your RL vehicles, your train drivers. They are usually your category 1 rail safety workers. The reason for that is that if they have an incident, or as the legislation refers to, a railway occurrence, it can have a significant impact on the network. And that is why they call category 1 rail safety workers. Category 2, sometimes some organisations will say, look, the category 1's a bit high. We got train drivers and we're happy to have them at that category 2. Then what they'll do is they'll go and check that against the technology of that organisation. And the reason for that is if you've got a lot of engineering controls versus, say, you're driving a train set out on an ARTC network between Adelaide and Darwin, there's not a lot of engineering controls. So you'll be travelling for miles just between normal signalling systems, versus where you are on a network that's got a lot of controls in place, engineering controls, fail-safe systems that if the driver exceeded a limit of authority, immediately the brakes are applied, and a whole lot of other engineering controls. Then they may drop it from a category 1 to a category 2. Okay, so that's really it. But category 2 people are usually the people that work as signallers. So if you go to a station and there's a signaller there that's controlling the signallers, controlling all the train movements, they're usually category 2 rail safety workers. And the other ones are usually typically your SIGILEX, the guys that actually work on the signalling systems, telecoms. They need to be able to distinguish between colours, blue and white and red and brown wires. So they actually get tested for that. So that's why they're category 2s. And category 3s are typically your labourers, your infrastructure workers, and your managers, your project managers. They're all category 3 rail safety workers. So because they go to site from time to time. And then the category 4 is non-safety. Again, it's also a non-safety critical worker, but they're typically people that they're performing rail safety work, and it could be a designer. So he's designing a railway, he or she is designing a railway, but they're not physically going to site. So, and there's no requirement to, and an organisation like ours, where we're internationally based, we'll have category 4 rail safety workers, non-safety critical, and they'll be working out of, say, Hong Kong, where they're doing a lot of design work out there, or they're doing some rail safety work from there. They're still classified as a rail safety worker because it's the competency component. But from a health point of view, they don't need to actually turn up to a site, walk on ballast stones, or walk on a construction site. Okay. Now, Category 4 workers are the only group that does not require a specific health assessment. These workers are those that are not working in the danger zone or the safe place, not undertaking safety critical work. Their hearing is not, so if they turn up to a work site, there's no sort of reliance on them having to have good hearing that if it is an approaching train and you have to yell for them to get off the track, that they've got a hearing impediment. Okay. The standard details of required assessments and it's available on the website. So the next component of the rail safety worker in determining fitness to work is the drug and alcohol and fatigue risk management systems. So, and there's a lot of rigor around both the systems. Hence, we use the RIW system. So people swipe on, swipe off, and you can actually monitor the hours of work. As a rule of thumb, most organizations, you're not allowed to work more than 12 hours, and that includes travel time from door to door. So when planning a roster, as a rule of thumb, again, it's around about 11 hours of work with some breaks and then 30 minutes travel each way to work. Okay. Some organizations have people that travel further and they have to then put further risk mitigation actions in place. So each rail organization has what we call a drug and alcohol management plan. It's called a DAM, and a fatigue risk management plan. So these plans must address the following requirements in Regulations 28 and 29. So pre-employment testing. So when you join the organization, you go for your pre-employment medical, your pre-sign-on testing. So we have an office in the city. You swipe on, it'll then, before you can actually log into the system, you need to go blow into the wall and it'll do breath analysis reading. And if it's a 0, it'll allow you to continue signing in. If it's above a 0, say 0.001, I'll get a text message to say first X's as producer 0.001 at location X, and then I will then make contact with them, ask them just to redo the test within 15 minutes, and then we run it from. We also have random testing, so we'll have a drug and alcohol testing program. It's urine tests, so that they'll just turn up to a work site. I try not to even get involved in that myself, just from an integrity point of view. So I allow my team to run it, and I ask them to protect their integrity and not communicate that random testing program to anybody. So I've had a few managers turn up and say, "Can you send me the schedule of the random alcohol testing?" And I've told them exactly where to climb off the truck. And we say we will not compromise the integrity of the random testing program. Okay, then we have post-incident testing. So if there is a railway occurrence, for example, there's a derailment or a rail safety worker has compromised the safety process, and they call that a safe working breach, immediately stand that rail safety worker down, or if they were involved in a derailment or collision or whatever, we immediately, and if they're not taken to hospital, if it's just a minor incident, within a 3-hour window, we have to have the drug and alcohol tested. We also need to notify the rail safety regulator of the outcome of that test. If we do not do it, they will send us a please explain while we have not done. In addition to that, sometimes we do what we call target testing. So there are people that are pretty smart at this, and they use what we call synthetic drugs, which is through your normal drug and alcohol screen process, it won't detect it. So what we do is we'll say, okay, and this has happened to me in the past where I've had a manager contact me and we've just basically completed a random test it was up in Hunter Valley, I remember this quite clearly. And the manager contacted me and said, look, I got concerns. Your drug bus was through here, but no one was picked up. And I said, well, that's a good result, is it not? And then he pointed me to 2 rail safety workers that were behaving erratic. I then asked him to explain it to me, and he explained their behaviors. And I said, look, yeah, that doesn't sound right. I said, okay, do you think they are using any drugs? And he said, I suspect that they are. And I said, okay, I'll send the drug and alcohol bus again to the next work group. And what we'll do is we'll do a target test on synthetic drugs, and that's how we got. So they were using synthetic drugs. Okay, so we stood them down and they were dismissed from the organization. So for your standard reading for alcohol is 0. So 0 grams of alcohol in 210 liters of breath for most work sites. So across the organization that I work for, that is what it is. So if you're above that 0.00 grams, you're producing a non-negative, test you further. So for drugs, there's a standard, and there you can see the number, AS 4308-2008. In that standard, it'll have a group of drugs listed, and it'll have a cutoff. Say a particular drug. I'll just come and use say drug A. Cutoff level is 40. Drug B's cutoff is 45. Drug C is 50. Drug D is 60. And so that what they do is they take your sample of your blood and they test it against those 5 drug groups. And if it exceeds a limit on any of those numbers that I just shared with you now, then it's a positive drug test. Okay. And that is why it is so important to, if you are using what I call over-the-counter medication, so if you go to your normal pharmacist and you say, look, I've got a headache, I need some Panadols and a few other bits and bobs. And the first thing that you need to inform them is that you're a rail safety worker and say, do you think that could impact my cognitive skills at work or potentially produce a non-negative in a drug test? And they will be able to give you good advice around it. They'll say, look, it will impact your ability to perform your task, which is then you have that responsibility to advise your one-up supervisor. First of all, what's really important here is when you're advising your one-up supervisor, do not disclose your medical condition. That's confidential and private to you. You only declare the medication. Okay, I've had people, opening up and declare, I've got these 5 medical conditions and this is, and I said, please don't tell me any of that. That's private to yourself. Just tell me what medication you're using and whether you think that will impact, and declare it. So declare it. There we have declaration forms. Give it to your one-up supervisor, and that goes on to your records. The reason I'm saying that is that you have a responsibility to turn up to work every day free of drug and alcohol and free of fatigue. Now, using any form of medication, whether it's over the counter or you went to see your doctor and they issued you with prescription medication, the same conversation needs to occur between yourself and your doctor around the fact that you are rail safety and that you may be subjected to random drug and alcohol testing. And if we find, as an example, that you are under the influence, let's just say we use person X, did not declare anything, and they on the day, and I've seen it happen so many times, people are in tears after. So we say, well, did you declare it? No, I didn't. I didn't think it would have an impact. Well, anyway, we're referring the matter to HR now. The matter then goes to HR. They will then consider it, and every organisation will treat it slightly different, And so what they will do is they will have a look at that, and an HR could turn around and say, you've breached our fatigue policy, and you'd say, well, what do you mean I've breached the fatigue policy or our drug and alcohol policy? Well, you didn't declare your medication, therefore you turned up to work in an unfit state, okay, and they treat it as a breach, and that could potentially result in just them issuing you with a verbal warning to don't let it happen again, to a warning or a serious warning or a final warning. Some organizations have a zero tolerance, and that's exactly what zero tolerance means. It means they'll dismiss you on the spot. So if you read an organization's advertising a zero tolerance policy around this stuff, that is what it means. So in our induction training, we make sure that everyone clearly understands this. Even when I do bi-monthly meetings, I amplify that in our meetings too. So my last meeting 2 weeks ago, and I also amplify, look, for Christmas parties, if you go out and you have a drink or something, please do not return back to the workplace. Do not return, because the other risk is that someone could report you, maybe one of your colleagues, maybe you're a bit noisy in the office, you attract the attention of a supervisor, or someone else views it and thinks, actually, and it could just be that someone doesn't like you and wants to dob you in and report, a phone call comes through to me and says, I suspect Joanne's gone out and had a few drinks lunchtime, and she's pretty noisy. She bumped into the desk. I'm a bit concerned. At that point, what I'll be doing is then approaching that person and the supervisor and asking them to go to a confidential location, and I'll be summoning the drug and alcohol bus for that individual. That test is called 4-cause testing. So that's the suspected use of drugs or both. So we'll then run that test, and if you produce a result that's above the zero, that gets real nasty. Point onwards, HR gets involved in, and it may just result in you losing your job. So this is a really important component. I mean, when I was working in Sydney Trains, we had an incident like this, and it resulted in dismissal of a very senior person in the organisation. Go to the next slide. Is there any questions around the DAMP before I move on?
Lawrence, so basically what I just want to know is, with the hand sanitation that's taking place at workplaces and things like that. Can the hand sanitizer actually have an effect on an alcohol test?
Well, look, you'd be, if you touch the device, it could potentially have an impact. So that's why what we do. So if you say at one of our fixed locations you produce a 0.01 and it has happened, then what we do is we tell that I'll contact, because I get a text message. I'll try and reach out to the person and say, can you go and wash your hands? Soap and water, take a 10-15 minute break, make sure your hands are clean, don't go and touch anything else. And then what we try to do is I try to get a witness in as well. So I'll just wait right there. We'll run the test again and we'll have a supervisor there to check it. So we'll run a doubled up approach to it. And then again, if it produces that's when at that point we'll call the drug bust. So there are two layers before we get to that. But yeah, we've had so many influences on the drug and alcohol program. That's why even before you submit a drug and alcohol test, the person taking the sample will go through a range of questions with you. From, what have you had for breakfast to, what sort of meds are you consuming at the moment? How many beers have you had? When last you had that? They try and elicit as much information from you before they actually run the test, so that they can make a good judgment call. Because it can be quite embarrassing when they ask people to go and stand aside while they being further examined. So we try and make it as robust as we possibly can, and obviously try and protect people's integrity through the process as well. What's really important is record keeping. Rail transport operators will need to verify that individuals' rail safety worker holds the competency and medical fitness and that they've been identified for the rail safety work. ONSA also expects that the operator will retain evidence to document the decision-making process used to identify the controls, use of AQF qualifications, level of drug and alcohol testing, types of worksite protection, etc., etc. Everything that your argument always has to go to what we call reasonable practicable, so far as is reasonably practicable. Because for smaller operators, you can't apply the same questioning or rigor as large organizations. Okay. And so they've even changed their cost model to match that. So bigger operators are paying millions of dollars to be issued with certification, versus smaller operators will be paying maybe say 15 or 20K per annum. And that's usually your rolling stock operators that have very, very low activity going on, maybe a couple of high rail vehicles or that sort of thing. So not much effort goes into actually managing them. Whereas the bigger ones will need longer lead times, longer audit times, a lot more documentation to work through, etc., etc. So under Section 51, Section 51 rail operations is a creditor and cannot be transferred to another person. In a contract arrangement, labour hire, where contract is performing work under the operator's SMS, the operator remains responsible for ensuring that the rail workers are competent, medically fit, etc. So what we call the rail infrastructure manager, we hear a lot of people talk about a RIM. So a RIM is typically ARTC, Metro Trains Sydney, Sydney Metro Authority. They all call RIMs. So when you're performing rail safety work for that organisation, you have to be competent to their framework. So if they say, as an example, to pilot high rail vehicles through a work site, you need to be a Category 1 medical, you need 2 years of operating experience, you need to hold a safe working level 1 qualification, or a PO2 and hand signalling 1 and 2 qualifications, then that's what you need to have as an absolute minimum before you can. And they may not hold personal records as well. They must. But what we try to do is follow the ARA pathway, which is let's put all of this information into the RIW system. Now, another key benefit from that is and what I like about when some of our managers come back to me and say, we've just recruited a project engineer or project manager from John Holland Group, as I'm just going to use them as an example, because I know that their competency is mapped to our competency. So all we do is they make a phone call to the RIW help desk and then move them straight across with all their paperwork. Their medical is there, so we can check the medical. We can then check when last they were drug and alcohol tested. We can check all their competencies and if they've had any fatigue breaches. So all those records actually sit in the system, and we can actually go and examine that and say that your medical is due next month. So we're going to put you through a medical now, or it's due in 5 years' time, or they haven't done it. So we can examine all of that. And then their competency itself, say a project manager, all 17 requirements for a project manager at Hollands maps to ours, maps to ARTC. So that project manager can move from ARTC to John Holland to CPB to MTR, seamless because their competence is recognized across all organizations. We go to the next one. Any questions around that? So the next one will be about the RIW system and the program. So here it's a national competency safety management system for rail safety workers set up by the ARA. And they have regular meetings. They facilitate. They have a governance committee with all your key stakeholders from different rail organisations across Australia. Turn up. Organisations will then make a presentation and say, "We want this qualification recognised." There'll be some conversation, and say 9 out of 10 of the rail operators could say, "Yes, we accept it as a competency within our organisation," or there may be 5 bits of criteria. And company X comes back and says, "We'll take that 5 criteria, but if you want to work on our network, there's 6 bits of criteria." Okay, so we'll have a robust conversation about that because we really don't want to have those mismatches. There's just too many, and it makes it so hard when people. So we're trying to make it a seamless competency management range. And then as well, the RIW system, employers can access information on employees or contractors' fitness for duty, education competencies. There's a single point of truth and get the information. And also the system's geared in such a way that it protects your privacy as well. So it's good. And self-managed. So you can go and check your competencies and you can see when your medical is due. So it does have that self-management functionality. You download the app and you can use it on your mobile phone as well. Really, really good system. I've only got good words for it. It may not be perfect, and that's fine, but it's getting better by the day. And the issue that I would like to see happen is that all rail organisations really commit to the program and have a better uptake. That's probably the only negative point around this RIW system. Okay, next one. So if we look at the system itself, it's got job roles, competencies, employment histories, shift swaps, stamps, and fatigue management. It holds comprehensive records of the card holders' qualification, medical fitness for duty, experience, etc. You can put people. It's got an LMS module, so you can. So rail organisations don't even have to go and think, "Oh, well, how are we going to structure this LMS?" You can just use what's currently there, and you can even create your own codes. And if you wanted to set up a particular project and you want to be clear about what your competency requirements are, you can just set it up and you just tell everyone associated with that project that they all need to be aligned to that project. You give them access. They can then upload all their competencies to that. You tick it off and say, "Yep, they're sending a crew of 10 people to come and work out for the next 12 months, and they in the system, and you can track and produce monthly reports." Scenario A. So if we look at this, Sam, is this where you come in, or do I keep going, mate? I can keep going.
I don't mind.
Okay.
I don't mind.
Is this where you said I know you did. You asked me very nicely. You bought me coffee and all. Said you'd love to do a piece here today. So if this is your piece, go for it.
Okay. Thanks, Lawrence. That was a very good in-depth description of what a rail safety worker is. So basically, the RIW system is to how you manage that. So this is scenario A here. So a worker will come onto a particular site, and on that site there'll be a requirement, whether it's the job roles or competencies that they require to enter that site. So this is all managed via that network operator or the principal contractor, who they determine the requirements. So once you have done the requirements or the competencies, those will be awarded to your profile on the RIW system, and then the appropriate job roles then can be acquired and validated via the competency, and then that will allow you to go onto the site itself. So it's a great way for PCs and network operator to make sure the individual has the correct competencies and the job roles, and so also they can put on a requirement for working hour rule. Like let's say on this project, on certain project, it's the 12 hours maximum within a 24 hours period. They can set that as a requirement. So anybody has over done the 12 hours, they will be denied access within that 24 hours. Also, they can put on a briefing on the notice. Let's say an individual go onto the site and swipe on the kiosk or the tablets, they will have a briefing there that the individual have to acknowledge before entering these sites, such as they are COVID symptoms free and also free of illicit drugs and alcohol, and they are fit for duty. Another scenario is a site supervisor or safety advisor can have download an app, or anybody really that has an RIW profile can download an app. But an access controller, which is more suitable for a site supervisor, what they can do is use that to scan the individual profile just to make sure that the person doing the job role have the correct competencies and is valid and it hasn't expired. So you can enter a site, obviously, regarding the induction and so forth, but the site itself really doesn't check whether your competencies to do the job is validated or is expired. So this will allow the access controller or the site supervisor just to make sure that the individual has the correct competencies and not fatigue also, obviously, and available to do the job via the correct job role. And that's pretty much it regarding the job access controller. So what the access controller, what this is you're going to see is when they scan the card, what they'll see the amount of logged in time, all the individual sites that the individual has swiped in on the particular day, their job role, who they work for, and at the top where they can check their job roles here. This individual obviously has these job roles and the competencies to go with those job roles or not. But let's say in site supervisor, making sure a electrician, they can check on this to make sure their competency is up to date and it's all valid and it's not expired. Any expired competency will be highlighted in red. Okay, so with this, they can make sure the person is up to date. All right, so just a brief overview and summary of the RIW program. Overall, it's a national competency management system for all rail workers. They have a strong focus on data protection, privacy, and security, which is a must because a lot of private data is held on the system. Smart device enabled system, so your mobile phone and so forth, you can use the mobile phone device to scan the cards and check competency. Virtual as well as physical RIW smart cards, so you can download the app to have the virtual card on yourself. So most people will have mobile phones these days, so instead of have a physical card, you can have a card. Okay, so the only portal used by network operators. So this basically is all the network operator using the RIW system. Okay, and it aligns to the network operator business rules and competency requirements. So on the RIW website itself, they have a business rule and the matrices that the network operator adhere to or created themselves. So you can go on there and have a look on that to check their compliance and also the job roles that the network operator has created and competencies that need awarding for those job roles to work on their network. Competencies are medical uploaded by approved assessing bodies. So everything is certified by the approved medical bodies to be medical checked and so forth for the competencies. Provided employers with real-time ability to ensure people are fit for work. Once again, this is go back to the fatigue aspect. So it's real-time capability of monitoring individual, how long they've been working on a site and how long they've been working on that particular day. Okay, and I know for a fact that they are improving the system in terms of updates coming soon. I think at the end of January, where if an individual has exceeded, let's say 11 hours within the day, a automatic notification via SMS and email will be sent to the manager. And then the manager can give that individual a call and say, hang on a minute, have you swiped out or are you still on the site? If not, I need you to swipe out. Or if there's an incident, then a required form needs to be signed by the relevant stakeholders, such as the manager, for them to be approved to stay on. Okay. Also, the ability to record a cardholder's attendance and improve fatigue monitoring. That's what we touched on for most non-safety workers. There's a great utility tools for the company to monitor their fatigue and sign up. A clear line of sight to frontline workers. Online ID checks with no need to visit Australian Post. So they have their own system where you use online ID checks. It's automated. So it makes it very streamlined and very quick. The service desk is available 24/7, 365 days a year. I've used them many times throughout while I'm at this corporation. So yeah, they're very useful and very adherent to your needs. My RIW features gives cardholder visible of the RIW profile. So like I said, your online portal as an individual, you can log on and check what your competencies, where it lies, the expiry dates, your association to companies and so forth. Multiple online help tools. They have a vast video and libraries of tutorials and quick guides for people that wanting guides and needing help for RIW. And finally, skills and competencies are transferable via the RIW system. As Lawrence alluded to earlier, it is very useful as an individual. Let's say you got your competencies records online, you can move between different companies and different associations and transfer those the competencies via the RIW system all in one. That's pretty much it. Back to you, Lawrence.
Sam, very well presented. Sam has developed quite nicely in this area, built up all the skills, knows how to work the RIW system, software that goes with it, and that's helping us to mature as an organisation as well. So thank you very much for that, Sam. Is there anything else? Next slide. That's it. That's the quick for questions. So I think we've just come in on time. Within budget. Yep. With about a minute to spare. So I don't know if there's any further questions or points of clarification.
Yeah, so thank you so much. So if anyone would like to, you don't have to ask the question. You can just send it through the chat to me privately, and I can ask the question on your behalf. But I do have a question here. So the system here it actually sounds really, really great. I personally never have used the RIW system before, but just wondering, is the RIW program, is this a mandatory program at the moment? Is it a program of choice, or are there other programs out there as well?
Yeah, so let me answer that question. So there are other systems out there. Even on this project that we work on now, there's 3 different systems. So one of the systems is called Pegasus, and that's a flow over from when they did they went to market, ARA went to market around about 2018 somewhere, and then they appointed MTA to be custodian of the project, and Pegasus then lost the contract moving forward. So within the rail industry. So when they did that transition across, some of the organizations in this project that I'm currently working on, they said, look, some of the companies have already started with Pegasus, so they just left them doing that. And the organization like ours, we just went straight to the MTA, the new system, and built it up that way. So there are other systems out there. This is the one set for the rail industry. So the governing body of ARA, that's Australian Railway Association, which has some serious representation there. Like there's the CEO forum, they've got a board, and then they've got different governance meetings that sit below it. So that's the body that will drive this program to get consistency across all companies and main, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 contracting companies. So that there's that universal approach to it. And then there's particular organizations will have that written into the contract. So, for example, with our organization, they'll have a standard that says you need to use our system, and so we follow that system.
Okay, excellent.
Thanks.
No, thank you for the explanation. Thanks for providing the further details on the systems out in the market. I'm having a look at the chat. I actually don't have any questions. I think you guys have been very informative in this presentation. You've covered off a lot. So thank you so much. And it's great to see you bouncing between each other as well. But thank you for your time today, Lawrence and Sam. Thank you so much for your presentation. And thank you for volunteering your time actually to the Legacy program. This, as you know, this program is developed to help pass on your experience and your expertise as subject matter experts in your field to students within Alium Works and just anyone who really is looking at a pathway into the rail industry. So thank you, because this programs like this, that's I'm sure you can appreciate, will actually support bridging the current skills crisis gap that we're experiencing at the moment. So very appreciative of your time today. And for anyone who is interested in joining the Legacy program with Alium Works, all you have to do is contact us on the number you see on the screen, or you can just shoot an email through to contact@aliumworks.com.au. Thank you for your time today, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Richard.